monitoring, how can we do monitoring with Azure, and also how can we do and take care of Azure storage, Azure files, file sync. Then on day 3, we talk about compute. And in compute, we talk about virtual machines, scale sets, containers, web apps. And on day 4 was a day that was basically all focused on the network components. So virtual networks, DNS, private and public zones, load balancers, how to connect your VNets, how to connect your VNet with on-prem systems. And so basically, and also application gateways. So all of this was a very, very long day. That's, as I said, there's a lot of content to talk about network. But today, so it's going to be focused on monitoring and how to back up and restore our servers. So let's jump in here, and let's start to talk about backing up and monitoring Azure resources. And to do that, I want to start by talking about Azure Monitor. And when we see Azure Monitor, everyone thinks about, oh yeah, that's a service. I go there, I create an instance of Azure Monitor, and I start to monitor my my resources. But well, it's quite a little bit different, okay? Is that basically with Azure Monitor, it's not just a single service, but it's more on the platform that I have. And as you can see, this diagram that you see over there gives a high-level view of what Azure Monitor is. So at the center of the diagram are data stores for metrics and logs, which are basically the two fundamental types of data that I will use in Azure Monitor. On the left, I have sources for of monitoring my data that populate then the metrics and the logs data sources. And then on the right, I have different functions that Azure Monitor performs. And over there, you can see, and I'm sure some of the services and resources that I can create on Azure, like Azure Alerts, auto-scaling, logic apps. I can use event hubs to stream this to other places. I can get insights from applications, containers, VMs, other monitoring solutions. And I can visualize basically all of this in like Power BI or in a regular dashboard that you can find on the Azure portal. So I would like to give some examples of things that I can do with Azure Monitor. So I can detect and diagnose issues across applications and dependencies. I can do this, for example, using application insights. I can also do correlation of infrastructure issues with Azure Monitor for virtual machines and Azure Monitor for containers, for example. And imagine the case that, well, I'm having a problem in my workload, and my workload has several different layers with several different technologies. I have in one place containers, in others I have virtual machines, then I can have web apps, I can have an API management. So I need to correlate all that logging information so that I can have a unique view about my workload as a whole. I can also support operations for scale using smart alerts and automated actions. And I can create visualizations using Azure dashboards or Azure workbooks. Also, two big features that we currently have in here. But let's just start talking about those data sources that we were saying. And I mainly have logs and metrics. So when it comes to logs, so log data collected by Azure Monitor can be analyzed with queries, and I can quickly retrieve, consolidate, analyze all that data. I can create test queries using what? Using log analytics. So log analytics in the Azure portal, and then I can have also a bunch of tools to interact with log analytics data. I can create and save queries, use this for my visualizations, or even use those queries in alert rules that I can also create. And we're going to talk about alerts in a moment. So Azure Monitor, what it uses is that it uses a query language called Custo. This is used by Azure Data Explorer and is suitable for simple log queries, but also includes some advanced features, such as like I don't know, aggregations, joins, smart analytics, so things like this we can also have with Custo. When it comes to metrics, so I like to define metrics as numerical values that describe certain aspects of a system at a specific point in time. So usually it's a numerical value basically associated with a timestamp. With this, then I can create some charts like you're seeing here on the screenshot. This is for average CPU performance. And I can understand that, well, I had some average CPU performance for certain resource, and then you can see when you have that because it has the timestamp and the numerical value. So this is what I can do this. Azure Monitor, it's capable of capturing this kind of data in real time, so almost near real time. So you can really have the charts open and just hit refresh, and you can see the data coming in almost as it happens. It has a certain latency, but it is quite good. So talking about querying logs with Custo. So to retrieve, consolidate, and analyze this data, I can have basically Custo. I can write log queries with the Custo query language. And the idea is that I can then create dashboards like I was telling you. And I can also use workbooks, Azure workbooks, Azure dashboards, where I can combine various kinds of data, include even logs and metric data, and just create a single pane view in the Azure portal. An example will be, imagine that you want to create a dashboard that has some tiles to show graphs of metrics and tables of activity logs. Charts comes from the Azure Monitor, and I can have the output from a log query if that's what you need. So let's jump in here. Let's do a demo, and I'm going to create a basic Azure Monitor log query to extract information, okay, from some log data that I might have in so basically in an Azure log analytics store. So from the time that we are delivering these sessions and recording until the time that you might watching the sessions, the Azure portal might have changed, and we need to assume that as normal, because Microsoft is always providing new features, new services, and improving the usability of the Azure portal. So if you see your version of the Azure portal slightly different than the one that you see in the demos that I'm providing, find that as normal. You just need to adapt, and I'm sure it will not be majorly different. So I'm sure that you can handle those changes. Okay, so we are here in the in the log analytics querying space. And this is just to show you some of the Custo queries that I can write about this. I can just type, for example, here, security event, and then I can just say take 10, okay, and this will, I can just click run, and you're going to see that I get 10, okay, of the latest security events that I have in my data sources. And yeah, you can see here, I have here, like, let's just zoom in on this one. I can expand, and you can check here the details of this security event that I have here. I can understand which computer it is from, and I can get access to all of this kind of information. Of course, look, I can do a little bit more. So instead of take 10, I can just do a sort, okay, by the time it was generated, and then I can say descending Okay, and if I run this, well, basically I get basically the same information, security event information, but now it is being sorted, okay, by the latest ones. And you can see here, so again, same kind of data, and I can just tweak this and understand what those security events were. So this one here, it is an account that was logged off, and all of this gets to be here in log analytics. I can also do other stuff, like I can do search in security events. So I'm going to do some search around security events, and then I can say basically it needs to have cryptographic, okay, needs to be around cryptographic, and then I can just say take 10. Okay, so I have a typo here, so there you go. And now I can say take, oops, yeah, let's just do this. Now take 10. And if we run this, okay, you see that basically those were security events, again, around cryptographic information. And you can then again, well, basically check here. So you see here that I have cryptographic operators here. And this is why this one showed and it didn't show the others, okay? So other stuff that I can also do, let me just go back to, let's just say security events again, but now I'm just going to do a where condition, and you can just do this. And then what is the level? Okay, so level needs to be equal to, I don't know, let's just say 8. And then I can even have another where condition where the event ID, okay, equals to 672, for example. And if we run this now, so we can see some data getting here. So you see that the queries are pretty fast. So this took like almost 5 seconds, but for the amount of data that I have, which is really a lot over there, and I get as a result more than 10,000 results. So it is okay to wait for 5 seconds to get this kind of data. And if you see here, so there you go, etc., etc., and you see that the level was an 8, okay, and this was the event ID, which is the special privileges assigned to a new logon. So again, you can see this kind of data here, and of course, look, I can also see this in charts, like for example, I want to see performance data, where time generator, it's bigger than ago, okay, 7 days, for example. And then I can also do another where condition on this computer. Okay, and then I can specify here a computer name like Contoso AZATTS2, for example. So the specific computer. I can also do another where like counter name, and my counter name will be available megabytes, and I can then summarize this, okay, and I want an average of counter value by, and then I can pass a binary that is the time, okay, generated, and I can just say 1 hour. So basically this, I can click run, and I can put this into a chart where it's saying that I don't have any. Let me just see the computer, Contoso AZATTS2. Okay, so let's replace this with another computer name. Probably that one is not populating any data right now. So then I can just press here short, and then there you go. I basically can see here, okay, all the available megabytes, okay, of that one, and in a very easy way to see, like in a chart, okay, and you can see here the last 7 days, and basically this is aggregated by sets of 1 hour. Okay, this is why we have 169 records, and you see the time that this takes to do this kind of aggregation. This is amazing, the speed that we can get with this service. Okay, so this is just some of the examples, okay, that that we can have in terms of Kusto queries. Look, I could be here all day doing demos on Kusto. I will advise you just go online, check the documentation about Kusto. They have a very cool website where they have already some pre-made Kusto queries that you can just run them from the portal directly. It is pretty cool, and you can learn also to write some other Kusto queries with that information. So now that we saw how we can go to Log Analytics and create some of the basic Log Analytics Kusto queries, let's talk about how can we view live application logging. So we have this feature that is called live application log, that basically this live log is streamed, and it's very easy and efficient way basically to check if we have some issues and we want to do some troubleshooting. So it is quite interesting to use this this feature, because it's a good tool for like doing that initial debugging. We can check log messages because they are shown in real time, and we can understand and give a quick feedback on code or server issues that we might want to, or we might have, and we want to take care of them. So how logs can be streamed. So the log streaming service adds a redirect to the file system logs. So you will see the same information as it is saved to those log files. So if you enable verbose logging for ASP.NET Windows apps, for example, the live logging stream will show all of your logged messages, like what you can see over there. And I'm just basically doing that. AZ web app log tail. I pass the name of my web app, and I say what is the resource group of that web app, and I can start to check all that logs that you see over there just on the console. So you can just see all of this there on the console, and as they happen, you're going to see those messages in the log. I can also do and configure this streaming of the logs by using a curl command. And to do that, so if you want to do the curl command, you have to go to your web app, and under the deployment center, you can check what are the deployment credentials. And over there, so you can grab those credentials, and then you can issue curl command using the deployment credentials, because it's one of the prereqs of the curl command. So we have app level or user level credentials. So if you talk about app level, means that Azure automatically creates a username and password pair when you deploy that web app, and each of your apps will have their own separated set of credentials. Then I have the user credentials, so I can create my own credentials for use with the web app, and then I can manage those credentials in the Azure portal. So as long as you already have at least one web app, or by using also some Azure CLI, some CLI commands. After we do this and I have a set of credentials, I can just do curl -u, just pass the username, and then you just pass basically your URL of your web application, but it needs to be HTTPS, then // the name of the web app .scm.azurewebsites.net API log stream. And when you do that, you're basically going to be able to see the live logging like you see here. And I'm going back here one slide, like you see in this screenshot, but in this one I'm using the CLI command. So, but what about log filing store locations? So when it comes to basically retrieve application log files, so we know that log files are an awesome resource for web developers. It's a must-have information, or else you just don't know what's happening in your application. But only if you know how to find and use the login information is that you can make good use of it. So where should you look for it? So I have in the Azure infrastructure, and if I use Windows web applications, it's not the same if I use Linux web applications. So we need to understand, oh, I'm using a Windows web applications. Well, we have something features and we have some kinds of logs that I don't have when it comes to a Linux application. So let's talk about Windows apps, the file system logs files. Those files are stored in a virtual drive that is associated with your web app. That drive is addressable at the drive d/home. So that will be where stuff will be in the web app. This includes a log files folder, and within that folder, I have one or more subfolders that you can see here on the screen: application, details, errors, HTTP, and a W3 SVC, and then usually with some number of the process. So the first one, the application, will contain application-generated messages if a file system application logging has to be enabled. Then we have the detail errors that contain detailed web server errors. Then we have the HTTP that contains IIS level logs. And of course, the web server logging has to be enabled. Then the W3 SVC contains the detail of all the failed HTTP messages or HTTP requests. Of course, if the failed request tracing was enabled. So you have to enable this in order to get this. I can also enable this kind of information to go to a blob container. So in this case, if you basically send this data to a blob container, data will reside there in this folder structure that usually has basically the year, like 2020, then the month, like 06, and then the day, like, I don't know, like 01, and then you will have all the log entries, okay, over there in a CSV format, for example. Okay, so every hour, okay, they will create some files for that are going to be SVC files. If we're talking about a Linux app log file, so for Linux web apps, the Azure tools currently support fewer logging options than for Windows apps. Redirections to the std error and the std out basically are managed through the underlying Docker container that runs the app. And these messages are stored in the Docker log files. If you want to see those messages logged by the underlying process, such as like Apache, you need to open an SSH connection to the Docker container, and then from the Docker container, yes, okay, I can do and I can see that. Other methods that I have to retrieve these kinds of logs is basically to use Kudu. Okay, so I have two big options like you see here on the slide, using Kudu and also using the Azure CLI. So if we're talking about Kudu, okay, so all Azure webs are associated with a source control management service side, so SCM. This is why in a lot of places, if we want to access for example, the Kudu environment, you see over there like Contoso, Fashion, and then something that is hiding there, .scm.azurewebsites.net. If you want to see the website that is running this, you could just go to Contoso Fashion and then that thing that is hidden there, .azurewebsites.net. So you have to have that SCM that you see over there. That's the source control management initials. So this site runs the Kudu service and other site extensions. If it is a Kudu that manages the deployment and the troubleshooting for Azure Web Apps, including like options like viewing, downloading log files, all of these kind of things. So the specific functionality that is available on Kudu and how to download logs will depend on the type of the web app. For Windows apps, I can just browse, to the log file location and then download the logs. If I'm using a Linux app, it might only have a download link. There is no option for browse through the log file location. You have here the screenshot, so I can just go to the debug console. I can even go to command or PowerShell, and you can even have basically that interface over there, so you can just tweak it and you can play around a little bit. So to download log files for Windows, I can go to the debug console. I just click command, and then in the file explorer I can click log files and then go to the download button, and I can just download the application folder and all the logs that I have there. It will zip that. You just download that. It's a very easy piece of software that you can just use in here. It's pretty easy. Just much click through the Kudu interface. If you're talking about Azure CLI, so to download file system log information, I can also use that. So first, use the following command to copy the logs. So basically, I can just say AZ web app log download. And then you have to say what is the log file that you want to download, from which resource group and which app that you want to download that. So it is the AZ web app log download command that you have to use. And then this will download basically a zip file, and then you can just unzip that in your machine and just open those CSV files in an application like, like Excel, for example, if you have Excel on your machine. I can also use what? So if you're sending those files to Azure Storage Explorer like we saw before, what I can do is I can also access the Windows logs saved to the blob storage container and then open them through the portal. So I can use the Storage Explorer in the portal, which is a feature that is still under preview today at the time of this workshop, but I can also use the Windows application or the Linux or Mac, because the Storage Explorer, you can also download it as an application and run it directly into your computer, and you can just access the files and just hit download and, just download the files. It's as easy as that. And like I said before, I have to open the relevant year, month, date, and hour folder. So it has like a year, then in that year it has like all the months is there, then you select the month, then you select the day, and then you select the hour that you want to download, and you have to download the log for the full hour. And if you have to download more than 1 hour, you have to download several files. Of course, then usually you can automate this if you need to do this all the time. If not, usually 1 hour, usually. It's more than enough. It's the most. If it is something there that you're not sure, it's like 2 files usually. It's more than enough to understand what you need, to achieve. Now let's talk about data types on Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor is a powerful reporting and analytical tool. We already saw that. We already started to talk a little bit about. I can do insights. I can take insights about the behavior of the running applications and environments that I have. I can basically, with this information that I have on Azure Monitor, it will help me to respond proactively to faults in my system. So before I get complaints and reports from users. But of course, I have several data types or types of basically that I can have ingest in my system. We already saw that. I have metrics and I have logs. Basically, metrics provide an alert trigger. I can do alert triggers with that. There are like numbers with a timestamp associated. And I have logs. So log data can be like W3C log format. It can be a specific format from your application. It can be basically, there are like hundreds of different types of logs, Windows logs, etc. So what are the target resources that can send data to this? It can be application data, like we're seeing right now about getting from Kudu and from your web applications. But it can also be the operating system logs. Because my app is good, I don't have any problem in my web application, but if I don't have the operating system logs too, I can't correlate both. So I also need to have the logs and metrics from the operating systems. I can just give you a quick example. I had customer where we were having some issues, and we went through the logs from the application. Everything was good, but yes, there was basically some reports of the system to be slow sometimes and things like that. And we're like, but everything in here, we don't have any errors, there's no timeouts, nothing. So what is the problem? Then, of course, we correlate that information with the times that people complaining. And then we could saw that, well, there were no problems on the application level, but yes, on the operating system level. So I'm not going to enter in details about it, but we had some logs that were very useful on the operating system that detect what was the problem, and we fix it on the OS level. And then, yeah, there you go. Okay, it was not a problem in our application, was more a problem on the operating system, and we could solve it very easily with this. So this is really, really useful. I can also have Azure resources providing data here, metrics and logs. If it is like a storage account, for example, it can provide logs of who accessed the files. But I can also have metrics like, okay, what is the data usage of this? What is the latency of this number of operations? What kind of operations? It was a put, a post, a delete, what it was. So for the blob containers, we know that is HTTPS REST call. So those are the operations that I'm going to have. And I can have like, oh, I'm doing X number of operations per second for this. Things like that. Also, other Azure resources, so mainly like every resource, you can have it there. But also on the Azure subscription level too. And I can also have other resources like, for example, on the Azure tenant level. There is a big difference when we talk about Azure tenant level. Is that because on the Azure tenant level, I'm saying usually is around what? Around Azure Active Directory. So I can also forward me the logs that I have from Azure AD and store them on Azure Monitor. And that way, if I do it that way, so I can again, sometimes I need that data to correlate that. If I have reports of users saying that I can't log in into the application, and I'm using Azure AD authentication to do this. So it's a corporate account. That account exists on Azure AD. So we need to go there and we need to check. And then we find out that, yeah, you can't log into the application because, look, we have a conditional access policy in here, and you're just not inputting the token correctly, or you're not inputting any token. It just gets expired. So yes, of course, you have to do this. And that happens, that already happened to me in one customer, and it was that Azure tenant information that was relevant for our workload. And of course, like I said before, custom sources, I can just create custom sources and input that data into Azure Monitor. Then I have here several different types of signals that I can have. So I have metrics, activity logs, and logs. So, for example, metrics. Metrics, we're talking about a metric that can alert, that provide an alert trigger, for example. When a specified threshold is exceeded, imagine that. Let's give an example. A metric alert can send an email or can fire an Azure function, for example, when CPU usage is higher than, I don't want to say 95, it's already too late, like I have here on the slide, but let's just say 75, 80%, okay? I can fire an alert, and then I can fire another alert at 95, that's fine too. What about activity log? So when we talk about activity log, so I can create an alert that will notify when a certain Azure resource changes the status. So imagine that when a specific resource or all the resources are monitoring the resource group, and then if some of those resources are deleted, okay, that information, it is stored on the activity log. And I can create an alert that will monitor that. So, and if that happens, bam, I'm basically notified. So it's pretty cool what I can do with this. I have this usually running in very crucial systems, even though if I use locks, even though that, well, there's still basically some activity log and then alerts monitoring all of that. And then I have logs, okay? So logs, it is basically, I can create alerts based on things that are written to log files. An example is, imagine that a log will alert me to notify me when a web server is basically return a certain number of HTTP errors, like 404s or 500 responses. So I can fire some alerts based on that. I can also filter, okay, those alerts. And to filter those alerts, I have several features here that I can tweak to use so that I can filter those alerts. I can have smart groups. I can have by resource type. I can even do by resource. I can just tell, okay, let's just create an alert like one of the ones that we previously spoke about. And in my old subscription, if a resource is deleted, but then I just want this just for storage accounts, okay? If it is some other resources that are deleted, I just don't care. Let's just imagine that. So we can tweak and we can filter alerts by resource type. Also by severity. So in terms of severity, I have like 0, 1, 2, and 4, 2, 3, and 4. That is critical, error, warning, informational, and verbose. So you can also tweak that. I just say, oh, if this is at least, okay, basically lower or equal to 2, okay, because informational and verbose, I really don't care. Okay, only if it is a warning, an error, or a critical one are the ones that are important for me. I can also monitor through the condition, okay, and then basically alert state. So when an alert is fired on Azure, what happens is that it goes to a status of new. Then it goes to a status of acknowledge when an administrator basically reports that, okay, I read about it, I'm on it. And then it gets closed when it is solved. It can be solved by an administrator, but it can also be solved by the system itself. So I have a system that is just fires an alert when the system gets to the CPU count, it's higher than 90%. But also at the same time, when I fire the alert, I also fire the auto-scaling rule. So it will get me more capacity on that workload. And of course, if everything goes well, more capacity in terms of compute. So the global usage of CPU will get lower than 90%. And when that happens, the alert status or state, it is closed. Okay, so the state of the alert, it is closed immediately because it is kind of solved. Okay. And there is no interference usually from an IT administrator. So metric alerts that I can have. So I can use metric alerts to achieve regular threshold monitoring of my Azure resources. I can use Monitor to run those metric alert conditions at regular intervals. Okay, like every X, just check conditions and see if I need to fire or trigger some of the alerts or not. Metric alerts are stateful, and Azure Monitor will send a notification only when the prereq conditions are met. And then metric alerts can be useful if, for instance, you need to know when your server CPU is reaching a critical threshold of X percent. So this is an example, and I'm going to do an example exactly on that so that we can see exactly that. What about the composition of an alert? So I have static threshold metric alerts and I have dynamic threshold metric alerts. So what is the difference? Is that static metric alerts, they are based on simple static conditions and thresholds that I can have the option to define. With static metrics, I specify the threshold that will be used to trigger the alert or the notification. Imagine that I have a static alert with a threshold of 85% CPU utilization, and I have this being checked every 2 minutes. It evaluates the last 10 minutes of CPU utilization data, access if it rises above the threshold. If the evaluation is true, then the alert triggers the actions that I will have associated with what we call the action group. And we're going to see, and we're going to create an action group. And then in the action group, I can have several actions like notify by email and then administrator, or sending this by a text message, or running an Azure function, a logic app, etc. So there are several options on that bit. I can also use dynamic threshold metric alerts. That this one's what they use is they use machine learning tools that Azure provides automatically to improve the accuracy of the thresholds. So that's the big difference, is that is not an exact value, but like a static, but is a dynamic one. So basically in the same example or something like this, for example, imagine that you look back period to 3, you set the look back period to 3, and then in the example that we use, we also have assessed the data range by 30 minutes. So we have 3 sets of 10 minutes. And what it does is that it will analyze the number of violations that I have under those exact same times, and it will calculate if it is something that, well, you hit 90%, but then it just drops, or if it is something that the type of grow that you have in here is a static grow. It was not just a peak. And the other one's a static, you just can't do this kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool this. So if you're not using this, I kind of advise you to check out this. It is pretty cool what you can do with this. What about scaling metric alerts? So Azure Monitor basically supports the creation of metric alerts like dimensions, monitoring multiple resources. You can see there, I mean, this case, that screenshot is from an Azure database from my SQL server. So I went there and I can just very easily just create a new alert rule for that. And then I can monitor resources in just one Azure region. If I create scaling metric alerts to monitor several resources, is no different from creating any other metric alert rules, because now we have what we call a unified experience for Azure monitoring and Azure alerts. We used to have a different experience per product, per service, and also even sometimes different experiences for scaling. Scaling was not done truly by alerts in certain services, okay? They had other code, other thing managing that. So basically in here, so the idea is that I can have this is just basically a common approach for alerting that I have. What about when I create that rule? What is the composition of the rule? So I have resources I have the condition, the actions, and the alert detail. The resource is the target resource to be used for the alert rule. It's possible here to assign multiple target resources to a single alert rule if you want. And the type of resource will define the available signal types. Then I have conditions. It's the signal type to be used to assess the rule. So the signal type can be a metric like CPU count. It can be an activity log or logs like we saw before. Then I have the actions, okay? And I need to provide here basically what are going to be the actions. For this, I need to create an action group. And I can group a set of actions in just one action group. Actions can be sending an email to notify me, send me a text message, using a webhook, calling an Azure function, logic app. Okay, there are several options. And then I have the alert details. So the alert details will be, what is the alert name, a description for the alert, and what is the severity that you want for this alert. And this is where I have the 5 different levels that we talk about. 0 for critical, 1 for error, 2 for warning, 3 for informational, and 4 for verbose. So I can just put that there, and then I will create an alert. And we're going to do a demo exactly with this so that we can basically see this a little bit better. Scope of the alert rules. So in the Azure Monitor pipeline, I can create alert rules for a bunch of items. And you see there for metric values, for log search queries, I can have, remember that we did the demo, so a very specific custo log query, and I can just create an alert exactly when I get new results from that query. Activity log events like, when a specific resource it is deleted, or when specific resources from a specific type, like storage accounts, are deleted or updated, or things like that. Test the website availability. Also, we can also have alerts on that. And this one here, it will be together with something called application insights too. So, and of course, the health of some of the services that we have on Azure, and even for the Azure platform. So Microsoft also provides information if they have a problem in Azure, so we can also tweak this and get basically alert by that information that we have in here. So like I promised, so let's jump in and let's do a demo here that is creating an Azure alert where we can tweak all the resources, conditions, actions, and alert details. So let's do the demo. Okay, so now it's time to create some alerts. To do this, I'm here in the Azure portal, and I'm going to use the burger menu, and I'm going to the monitor option. Under monitor, we can have basically the Azure monitoring application in the Azure portal. I have some options in terms of insights, of virtual machine, storage, for key vaults, and Azure Redis cache that is under preview, those two. And well, I can still do some settings, etc. In my case, what I want now is just to talk about alerts, and we're going to cover the rest after in further demos. So let's go here, let's go to alerts, and let's create a new alert rule. To do this, you just click on new alert rule, and now, like I said before, so we have the scope. What is the resource that you want to do this? The conditions, the action group, and then we have here the rule details. Let's start with the scope. I will click select resource, and now I have here all the Azure resources that exists. But I want a virtual machine. Let me try virtual machines. I just type virtual. I have here the option virtual machines. Great. It just filters me by subscription. I could add here other subscriptions if I had others. Resource group. And then in this resource group, I have 2 virtual machines. I'm just going to select one. Okay. You could select 2 if you wanted, but I'm just going for 1. So this will be my resource. And now I have here to select a condition. the conditions shows me a list of signals. And of course, the signals that you have here match the resource that you selected. Because I selected a Windows virtual machine, so I can do percentage CPU. And that's exactly the one that I will choose. But imagine that I had chosen not a virtual machine, I have chosen a storage account, for example. So what happens is that percentage CPU doesn't make sense in an Azure storage account. So you will not have that, but you will have something like IOPS, availability, space used, and things like that. That also, some of them do not make sense as signals in a virtual machine. So they depend on basically on the virtual machine, on the resource that you choose. So I have here to configure now my signal. So what I have to do here is, yes, I want to do something like greater than, and I could have a threshold here, and I can just type here, or I can drag this bit here, and I can do something like this. Okay, so it should be 70. Let me just put really 70, okay? Or I can just type here. Usually I just type in here. It is just easier. But if you already have some usage here, you should have a chart here with the usage, so you can also use this to drag and drop, and this will create a threshold value on the text box in here. And then I could just say, yeah, I want an aggregation period of 5 minutes. Every minute I want to do that evaluation. So I'm done, I'm good with that signal. Now I have to define an action group. So I click here, select an action group, and as you can see here, I already have some action groups there, so I could just choose those two and click select if I wanted. But because I want to demo also the creation of an action group, so I will click here on the top where it says create a new action group. And I'm just going to say AZ104 video action. Okay, action group. The short name will be AZ104 videos. I have to define, well, in this subscription, and then I can say in which, resource group I want. It's quite annoying because you can't create a new resource group in here, but let me drop this in Logic Apps, for example. And then I have here an action, so I can have a set of actions in here. So I will just do the first action. I will just call this notify, Tiago. And I'll just click here and I'll just say email, SMS, and voice. And I could just say email, and I can just type here, my email. I can just do like this. I will get an email message over there, or I can just tell you, oh, I just want to get an SMS token. Not all countries have their country code here, so you have to check if your country code, it is already supported. Microsoft is always pushing new country codes here, so if you still see that it's not yet now available, hey, look, doesn't mean that it's not going to be, just basically wait some time, and it will, I'm sure they will add it there. I can also do a push notification for the Azure app, so you can have the Azure app for iOS, for Android devices, and if this is the account that you have there, just drop here the account that you're using on the app, and you will get a push notification. Same thing for voice, but like voice currently is just for the United States and Canada, so only those countries can add and can have this available. So again, like SMS, it depends on the time, but they will add others for sure. I'm good with the email, okay? I don't need more than that. I could add here like another action, and you could check here. I can just do like, for example, Logic App. And I can just say here, okay, this one, I have a Logic App here, and there you go. So I see I can just call one of the Logic apps that I have in this subscription. So you could just call it straight from here. if I don't want that, I can, let me just close this. Let me just do Azure Functions, for example. So the same thing, what's the function app? You will select here the function apps. I don't think I have any function app in here, so I can't show you this. But it's just choose the function app, and then what is the function that you have there? And then bam, that function will be called because basically this alert was fired. I'm good with this. Let me just clean this up. So I just want this, only this action group, it will be enough. So you see it there, the action group has been added. And now I'll just type here AZ104 demo alert rule. Okay, I could just specify here, okay, some description, okay, if you want it. And this is the severity, remember, 0 to 4. So I will just go for informational, which is 3. And I have to enable this, okay, don't forget to enable this. So one time I just did all this, etc. I forgot about the damn enable button here, the checkbox. And my God, it didn't work. And I was like, why it doesn't work? So I spent like a good 5 minutes there trying to figure it out. And it was, yeah, it's not enabled yet. So there you go. It was created. Now, of course, if my virtual machine gets a CPU for the last 10 minutes higher than 70%, I'm going to get an email on that email message. You can click here, manage all the rules, okay, and you can see here. This is a demo subscription, so don't check the names, but it's always for the same resources. You can see here, and I have here a bunch of alerts, okay, already defined in here. And you could just see here, okay, they are enabled, they are not. Just click in one, and you can just check, okay, all the conditions that you have here. You can disable this, delete. So managing basically all your rules in the same place. It's pretty cool. Okay, what we can do with this, and it's so easy to set up an alert in Azure. So just go and start to create some alerts. So I can use log alerts to alert on events in my application. So Azure Monitor can capture important information from our log files. Those log files can be created by applications, by the operating system, even by hardware, or even other Azure services. So many times as a solution architect and an Azure administrator, I want to explore ways to monitor this log data and how this log data can detect issues before they even become a problem to customers. And this is why I can use this log alerts. And for example, an example again with a CPU. If there is a threshold of a CPU by the last 30 minutes, I can evaluate some of the response codes issued on my web application server for the last hour to see, well, if that is the case, I have to do something, okay, for that application, like scaling that compute or initiate another action that will solve that. I have basically composition of the log search rules that I can use. So I can use a log query like you already saw using Custo. I have to define the time, so the time period, which is the time range for the query. What is the frequency, how often the query should run? Like, oh, every minute you should evaluate this, like we saw on the alert that we created. I can also do a threshold, which is a trigger point for the alert to be created. Like, oh, if you reach 70%, bam, okay, it is going to be created. Then, again, I can perform actions when that alert happens using action groups. And I can create an action group, and that action group can have a bunch of actions that can be sending an email, a text message, a notification for the Azure app, make a phone call an Azure function or a logic app, send a notification to the webhook, creating a ITSM ticket like in ServiceNow, for example, and other ITSM tools, etc. I can manage also smart groups, and smart groups are basically an automatic feature that I have on Azure Monitor. This uses machine learning algorithms So this way, Azure Monitor can group together alerts based on repeated occurrences or similarity. It's pretty cool because with smart groups allows me to address groups of alerts instead of each alert separately. So I don't need to go one by one. If I see that there is a group here, so probably the cause will be the same. So I can just use this feature. It's pretty cool. So of course the states of this, it's kind of the same as the alerts. New, acknowledge, and close will be the one. So new, it's when the smart group has been created with the aggregation of several alerts, but no one have even addressed this. Acknowledge is when an administrator starts the resolution process, and then close is, well, when the source alert is fixed. So the alert is no longer active because imagine, again, the CPU. If the CPU is no longer higher than 70, well, it's closed, it's solved, we don't need to do more stuff. Monitoring my applications. So by monitoring your applications for issues as it's being developed, I can prevent errors and exceptions later. And this is the good thing about monitoring. Also, when you're doing this and you're doing this in other environments than not production, you can also understand what is the behavior of your applications and easily, before this goes to production, evaluate and even connect this with a DevOps pipeline. So monitoring the infrastructure, it is important. Okay, and we can understand here what are the big problems that we might have and solve them in advance. We also have something that's called an Azure Security Center. This is an amazing tool. It's a service, basically, that manages the security of our infrastructure in a centralized location. So I can use this to monitor my security of my workloads, whether they are on-prem or even in the cloud. So even on-prem, I can do this. So attacks, basically, today are becoming more and more intelligent. And the number of people with the right security skills, it is still low in the enterprise market. So the Security Center can help us deal with some of the challenges. Because it is hard to keep things always up to date, to be totally honest with you. It is quite hard. I have customers that they are pretty good, but then they always have someone in the company that's not that good. And usually the security, it is measured by the weakest point, not by the average. And so this tool can really give you a view on what are the problems that you might face in your organizations. So let's just do this. Let's just explore the Azure Security Center. So now it's time to talk about the Security Center and do a short demo on how can we see some of the results that we have in Security Center. So let's first find the Security Center. Again, there is multiple options to go to the Security Center. I can just go straight in the Azure portal. There's a link on the bottom for the Security Center, or I can click on the burger menu and you can find Security Center. So under the Security Center, I can find a dashboard that is here loading. And in this dashboard, I can find on the top, there you go, my secure score, okay? So this secure score, basically, there's a bunch of recommendations that they have numerical values, and they're going to give me a score. And my score here is, well, let's just say pretty poor. So this is a demo subscription, and on purpose, okay, I just want to say this disclaimer, I have several services that are having issues and problems, and as you can see, and this is why we have such a poor secure score. Incredibly, to be totally honest with you, when you go to some customers that, well, they start to move stuff to Azure, but they still don't have that much of a governance, they still even think about security and all of that, it is quite common and normal for you to find poor scores. But well, let's just talk about here our secure score. So I can click here, you can see the details around this subscription. If you have more than one subscription, that will show up in here, and then I can just click view recommendations for this subscription. And you go to some of the recommendations about this and how can you increase, your score. Like, I don't have even enabled MFA for this. I'm like, oh my God. So if I can just go here and enable MFA for the accounts that have owner permissions on my subscription, well, I could basically increase this by 10 points. So that corresponds to 18% more. So you will get, let's just say, more than the double that we have now. So that will be a huge increment in here. But I also have some things like secure management ports. I have one of two virtual machines that have management ports open. Management ports could be like RDP, SSH ports, for example. So I can also improve this. Well, and you get the idea, okay? Apply system updates, remediate vulnerabilities, and you have all the list in here, okay? And we have some of them that you're completed. So managed access and permissions, apply, data classification. So those are complete. I'm fine with those, but there are a bunch of more in here that I could basically improve a lot by following the recommendations in here. And the advantage of using the security center, and this is why I love this, is that, look, you don't need to be like a super expert in terms of security to see what is wrong with your configurations, because this provides you a very good view and a consolidated view of what you need to change and what you need to update. So I just went back to the secure score view, and if I go here, for example, to the option that says the resource security hygiene, and I have this divided by categories like compute and apps, networking, IoT hubs, data and storage, identity, and also security solutions. So I'm in the compute, and you can see here, like, this encryption should be applied. I don't have any of my two virtual machines with this. Management ports again. So let's just see management ports. Because imagine, I don't know what management port stands for. So I check here, I say, okay, affected resources. So I have to do something on that VM. Oh, remediation steps, great. So let me click here. And see here, I have basically instructions, almost kind of step-by-step instructions that, hey, go to the VM, in the network blade, click in which of the rules that allow management ports like this, and this, okay, and either change the action property to deny or improve the rule by applying less permissive range of source of IP address, because I think the source IP address that I have on this one, this is for the 3389, that specific virtual machine, and I think I just have like a star, so I just accept basically from connections from everyone. At least, hey, I should just kind of lock down the IP addresses just to a set of IP addresses and not for everyone in the internet. So that'll also improve substantially here the security on this. And you get the idea, same idea for all the other stuff, and I could be here basically showing you all of them, but I'm just going to show you one of them that says quick fix here. So for this, let's go for data and storage. So in data and storage, you see here, secure transfer to storage accounts should be enabled. So this currently today, it is enabled by default when you create new storage accounts. And this is why you have there 2 of 4 storage accounts, because 2 of them probably are newer, so it just doesn't show there anymore. But those 2 are old storage accounts that I have. So I'm just coming here and said, okay. Because this has at the quick fix tag there, so what I can do is I can just click in the storage accounts that I want to implement this, and I can click remediate. What this will do is that you have the remediation steps here, so it will just go to the storage account, go to the configuration page, and enable secure transfer required. You can do it on your own, just follow the steps, as easy as this, like the previous one. But if I'm lazy, I can even just select here, click remediate. Azure will do that for me. It's great, it's awesome. So if you are not that experienced, if you have customers that are not that experienced, this could be something interesting for them because they can do this without asking me or another professional to do this. They can do this on their own. Just click on the button. Of course, you should know what the button does and you need to understand it, but it will just change the configuration and you should be okay. That one, for example, just requires HTTPS and will not allow any more HTTP connections. Of course, if you have a legacy system that has a hard-coded HTTP connection, etc., yeah, you might be in trouble. But well, you need to watch out for that. And so there you go. I'm back here to the dashboard, and of course, look, we could improve this a lot. Also, Security Center comes in 2 versions. Okay, so this version you see here, the subscription coverage. I have one, and it just says partially covered and not fully covered because I'm not in the standard subscription for the Security Center on this. If you go to the standard one, you get more features, more coverage in terms of things that you can do with the standard Security Center. The standard Security Center, it is free, but if you want, you can promote regular Security Center to standard, and I think currently it's a 30-day trial that you get. So still, you have 30 days to try this. If you don't want it, you can just go back again to the other one. But I have to confess that after you try it, it will be very hard, okay, for you not to like it. And that's it. That is the Security Center. So what about Azure Application Insights? So I can use Azure Application Insights to monitor and manage the performance of my applications. Application Insights will automatically gather information related to the performance, errors, exceptions in applications that I have. I can also use App Insights, okay, to diagnose what are the root causes of the problems that are affecting my applications. Basically, in this screenshot that you can see in here, you see that I have a exception, system.web HTTP exception, and I have the event time when that happened. I have the message. The message says that the controller for path favicon.ico was not found. It's an HTTP exception. And then I have the call stack. Over there I have the failed method. It's the get controller instance that is failing. And then I can understand this. And you see that I have on the left on the same screenshot. So you have also a bunch of other issues and problems that I'm facing. So other HTTP exceptions, because that's the search result that I did. I did the timestamp from a certain interval, and then with exception, HTTP exception. And then you can see there are like several other exceptions there that just can check them, and you can try to understand what are the problems that you have. But also Application Insights, I can also monitor the release pipelines of my application in Azure DevOps. So I can take appropriate actions to resolve issues that affect my application before it's even deployed to production. So Application Insights this way can also improve by a great rate, okay, the development life cycle that I have for my applications. It can also give you, and things that you see here on the other screenshot that is in the back over there, I can also see things like what's the usage of my application, okay? What are the users that I'm having in my application? And you can see, I have like 4,000 users. We can check individual sessions of those users. You can also see what are the events that they fired, funnels. In funnels, you can check basically the what are those users doing in your application, and they go to the main page of your application, and then they go to articles, and then everyone is reading a specific article that you have in your, imagine it's a blog that you have. So you can check out this kind of information from here. And also the retention. What is the retention rate? How much time do users spend on your application? And if you see that this might not be super interesting if you have internal only application, because it's like, oh, this is the reporting tool that we have, and hey, that's the only one that we have, so our users have to use it, and that's it. I don't see things that way. Okay, I see that this for internal applications to be super useful, because if we are having issues, the way that we design our application, performance that our applications are having, and users might not complain. They might just, yeah, okay, yeah, this is slow, it is what it is, and they just basically don't complain anymore. And that's really bad, because if they don't complain, we don't know that we need to improve. But with this kind of information that I can produce using Azure Application Insights, I can understand that, look, yeah, this is wrong, this is bad, I need to improve this. So we can be proactive and improve even internal applications. And then when we improve a new version, a new iteration of our application, users will have a better system to work with. They will do the same work easily, faster. And of course, this improves productivity in the company. And of course, in the end, we're improving our company. We're improving performance of our workers. And that's always positive signs. And this is why we work, is to improve employee satisfaction and employee performance. It is an internal application. Now imagine if it's an external application where you have competitors. Because look, people go to your website, a potential customer, and if your site is hard to navigate, if it is slow, if it just doesn't give the information that the user wants, well, if you see all of this, it's easy, right? Basically, imagine if you're that user. Hey, you just close that, you search for another, and look, there is another website. That will be better, it will work, it will be fast, it will be highly available, etc., etc., etc. So you prefer to use that one. I can just give you an example. Some weeks ago, I had to buy a new TV, and yeah, there was a basically website from a shop. I went there, but the site was so freaking slow that I was like, and I knew that they had the TV in promotion and everything, and I was like, my God, this is so slow. And when this was loading, etc., I still opened another website in another screen. I could get to the TV, and when I saw the price was just like it was not relevant. The difference on the price was a little bit more expensive, and I'm like, yeah, if these guys know how to handle a website, they might be good in other stuff. Like if I have a problem with the order or something like that, yeah, I prefer to buy over there. So I just went to that website and I bought it. It was a little bit more expensive, again, not relevant, but I prefer to buy there because they have a better experience for me. And if this is the website, which is basically, what they are showing right now, well, the support will be the same thing as, at least I think so, right? It will be super slow, hard to work with. And on this website, I already know how it works. It works well. Well, you just go there, you start a chat window, and you complain about it. Oh, I have this problem. And usually they are pretty responsive. So I'm like, hey, just going to stick with this. I'm not going to the other website. It's freaking slow, and it doesn't work well. So and they lost a sale. And they can be losing tons of sales just because of that. We don't want that. And I didn't complain, to be honest. I didn't open any support case or something. I just didn't use their website anymore. And if you see this usage and people that are not staying in your website, well, you have something wrong. You have to solve this. Application Insights works side by side with your code. There are SDKs for .NET, for Java, and even others that are not fully supported by Microsoft. They are partially supported, like PHP. So look, just run this side by side, and you're going to start to get these kind of insights as you see here on the screen. Okay, so now it's time to do a demo on Application Insights. So it's time to check how Application Insights, it is so easy to set up, and we can get amazing telemetry data of our applications, sometimes even in real time. But let's get started. So the first thing that I need to do is to create in the Azure portal an application insights resource. So I'm just going to search for application insights. I will click create, so the traditional thing. Then I have my subscription. I'm just going to create here a new resource group for my resource. And I have to provide here a name for my app insight. So I'll just call it app insight, okay, demo, something like that. It is okay. And I'm just going to drop this one in West Europe. Then I'll just go to review and create. I don't need to tag this one. It's just a demo, so I'll be good with this, but don't forget, always tag your resources. So we are creating our application insights. Usually it is pretty fast, as you could see. And I can just go straight to my resource. So I already have application insights. So now I have built demo application, and we have it here. So this is basically Visual Studio Code. I just created this HTML file. Pretty simple, has a title, okay, basically an H1, an H2, and some text. But imagine that this was a real application that you have today. Now, what I need to do is just drop here a piece of JavaScript with the instrumentation key on it, and you will see that this will just connect straight away, okay, with basically that application insights resource. So let's just do that. So I'm just going, I already have my the script here, so I'm just going to drop it there. So this is what you have to do. And I need, of course, to replace this instrumentation key. So I will just delete this. I'm going back to the Azure portal. And if you see this, and you're in the overview blade, so you're on the left, okay, you need to be on the overview blade. You can just copy this instrumentation key and now drop this key in the JavaScript. So let's just do that, and let's drop this. Let's press Control S to save the file. Never forget to do that. And basically that's it, okay? I don't need this anymore, so let me just close that. Now, I already have the file here open, so if I just open the file, so you see this, Azure Training Days, okay? I'll just leaving here basically the full screen. I'll just, okay, do some refreshes on this. I copy this. I can even, okay, open, for example, another browser, so I can open here on Google Chrome, okay, and I'll just refresh a little bit more. This is just to create calls, and then so that the application insights get all those calls. And I can even open here, let's just open our old Internet Explorer friend. There you go. So, and we can even, okay, use this one, okay, and I'll just refresh this a little bit here so we can minimize all of this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show all those calls have been registered, okay, in App Insights. But for that, we just need to probably wait a few seconds so that the calls get to Application Insights. But let's just wait a little bit, and then I'll show you the App Insights. Okay, so we are in Application Insights, and there are several ways to see our requests. We can go to logs, for example, and I already basically wrote here a Custo query that just does a time grain of 1 second and will calculate basically the page views and the latency of those page views. So if we just run, okay, this one, see, you can see this in a shard, or you can see basically the individual resources where we can expand and we can find a little bit more information about those requests. If we, for example, if you just go to application map, you can also see your application map. In this case, well, just have this, but in a more complex application with calls to databases, etc., you can see all of them there. And if you go, for example, let's go to usage and users. So users under usage here, you can see, oh, we had 41 users. There's a bar chart here. And of course, if we click here, view more insights, we can see that. And look at here. This is why I opened this in several browsers. So we see that we have here like Edge. So this is the new Chromium Edge. We had 21 visits from that. That was my refreshes. And Chrome 19 Internet Explorer, just it is just one. Maybe if we refresh this, we can get more out of that. Well, probably not yet. But well, we will, that will be possible. Also, you can also see here, okay, from which country they came for, and etc. So, of course, if you had a real application, all those insights, they are pretty cool. But this is more just to show how easy it is to set up this. And even if you're not a developer and you're like an IT pro and you just need to add this to an application that has been already developed by your team, you can do it, and you just don't need a developer to do this. This is just a piece of JavaScript that you need to put on a page on your web application, as simple as that. So I hope that with this demonstration, you got the feeling how easy it is to do this setup. So let's just do a demo now, which is exploring the Azure Application Insights, where we can see some of the features and even more, like getting availability and things like that, that we discussed in our presentation. So now let's do a recap on the Application Insights. I already have an Application Insights created, but even if I wanted, I could just click Create a Resource. You just type Application Insights, and you just click Create, and you see how easy it is to create an Application Insights resource. Just tell whether it's a subscription or it's a resource group where you want your stuff, a name, and a region that you want for your Application Insights. And then, of course, you need to connect the resources, and usually resources have an option that says Application Insights. You just need to tell that resource data goes to that Application Insights. So I'm not going to click Create because I already have this, because I needed to have some data on this. So I go here to Dashboards, and under the Dashboards, as you can see, so I already have here some data about a web app. So I can check here. This is, by the way, this just builds a very fancy dashboard. Don't think that I built this. To be totally honest, this is the default dashboard that Application Insights gets you. So you just say, hey, I want an Application Insights, and bam, dashboard, and bam, it will just create this for you. You have here like unique sessions and users, failed requests that I had. I like a lot of failed requests. I need to know what's wrong in here. I need to do something about it. Server response time, average page load and breakdown. And I could even get other data like server exceptions, average CPU process, if I was using and if I had code this. In my case, I don't. This is just using the JavaScript piece, and I just had put it in this web application that I have here. But I can do very cool things, like, for example, this here, it's the availability. So if I click here, you go to my Application Insights, and you can see I did almost more than 2,000 tests, and every time they were successful. And if I click here, if I expand this, you can see the individually, basically from where the requests are being made. And you see Australia, Brazil, East US, North Europe, West Europe, Southeast Asia and West US. And you see here the average, okay, that you currently have from those places. And of course, look, this is a app application that is hosted in Europe. So of course, like North Europe, West Europe, they have very, very low averages. And if you go to Australia, well, yes, we get a little bit more than the other ones, but it's kind of expected. Let's just face it, okay? And then I have Southeast Asia that has a very good, very good. 3.5 seconds is quite good. And I have, of course, the United States also with very, also, acceptable year averages for the test. But in the last 20 minutes, okay, all my tests were successful. How can I do this? So if you click here, add a test, I can just create a test. I just need to provide here a name. In my case, this was a URL ping test. So I just need to provide here, okay, what is the URL? So I can just say this, like, mycompany.com. So I could just do this, and I can just tell here 5 locations, the resource criteria is an HTTP response 20, and I have a timeout of 120 seconds. You can say, whoa, that's a lot. Let's just put 30 seconds. I can't have more than that. And I'll just say, well, it's 5 locations. What locations? And you see there, oh, okay, yeah, US. Well, I don't want only US. I want Australia. I want Brazil. Well, Central US doesn't make, or Central US makes sense, but then those two doesn't. So I will keep the US as Central, East, and West. I need something in Europe. So I have France. I have North, or let's just do West Europe, which is Amsterdam. And then, well, maybe UK too, to check if I'm doing from the UK, and East Asia, because I need to have something in Asia. And you just click create, and then this will just generate. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but you get the idea. It will just generate a new availability test. I can also get to application map. You can see the application map of your apps. In my case, I only have basically one instance on this. I just see one thing in here. You can see all the application map with the connections, if it calls a storage account and things like that. I can also check failures that I have in my application. You see here, I have some failures. I click here, okay, and I can check what are the top response codes. I have a 404, so I can click in the count, and you can see individually exceptions here. It is loading. It's 104. There are a lot, so it will basically take a while to load this, but then you can click and you can see individually the details and the HTTP requests and responses and why, okay, there was a failure on this. Again, it's pretty cool. So you see your page not found. I can click and you can see now, okay, the details of the page. You can see here, okay, what was the page, okay. Basically, this was the problem, okay? So this is the kind of stuff that you can find on this. It's pretty cool, okay? Really, I really like this. Of course, you can also see users, sessions, okay? The user flow, the funnels, the impact of your users. So all this kind of information that Application Insights provides you. So when I say that Application Insights, it's really, really cool. It is. And a lot of people come to me and just said, oh, can you just tell me basically what is a good definition for you from what is an application insights? And usually I like to define this as, if you guys know Google Analytics, and don't get me wrong, Google Analytics is an awesome product, okay? It does amazing things. But this does so much more. So I usually say it's kind of Google Analytics on steroids, because this one here, it really does a lot of other stuff that by the nature of the Google product, okay, this does more because it has a different nature. That's it, okay? This goes server side and grabs stuff from the server side if you code it that way. The other one doesn't, but it's because that's the way that it was built and the purpose of the product. That's it. It's an amazing product. Don't get me wrong. I just want people to think that I saying that that's a bad product, because it is not. It is also a great product. And this is it. Okay, this is what we can do with Application Insights. Okay, so in a recap here, I have Azure Monitor, which is a service to collect, combine, analyze data from different sources. All application log data and metrics can be stored under the service-like application insights. And then I can have also the security center. And then in the security center, I can give basically an overview picture of the status of my infrastructure when it comes to security and shows off all the security constraints and concerns that I have. What about Azure Site Recovery? So when it comes to Azure Site Recovery, so this is a tool that is just much more than help me recover from system outages, for which is very known. Azure Site Recovery replicates workloads also between the primary and the secondary site. Site recovery can also be used for migrating virtual machines, for example, from on-prem to an infrastructure in Azure. And today, we have a service that is Azure Migrate that already does migration and not only assessments, but until some time ago, this was one of the best practices, was to use Azure Site Recovery to do those migrations. So I can have a central management, so replication can be set up, managed, and failover, failback can be invoked within the Azure portal. I can do on-premises virtual machine replication, like we said. I can do also Azure VM, so region to region. I can also do app consistency during failover, so this is not just doing the disks and that's it. They also basically keep the consistent state in all times during the replication about your applications. It also does a flexible failover because failovers can be run on demand as a task or trigger during an actual disaster. And does network integration because site recovery can manage network management during the replication and disaster recovery scenario. So setting up this is not just setting up a recovery services vault. So of course, yes, that's one of the things, but I also need a network that is a valid Azure virtual network required for the replication of my virtual machines. Then I need the service vault. I need credentials to use for Azure, must have the virtual machine, contributor, and site recovery contributor roles. So we need to have this to allow permission to modify both the VM and the storage that site recovery is connected to. What about the replication process? So machines replicated according to the created replication process. After the prereqs tests are set up, which was like creating the infrastructure, storage accounts, etc., the replication of the machines then can start. They are replicated according to the replication policy that we define. During the initial stages of the first copy, the server data is replicated to Azure storage, and then after the initial replication finishes, a second replication occurs. This time, only the delta changes to the virtual machine are replicated to Azure. What kind of workloads do we support? So Azure virtual machines, okay, like I said, region to region, Hyper-V virtual machines that can be on-prem or not, or even in another cloud if it's that the case. Physical servers, Windows and Linux operating systems, usually other cloud virtual machines are basically, we take care of them as they are a physical server, so that's what it is for us here. And also VMware. So I can also do this as VMware virtual machine. So Microsoft supports that too. Disaster recovery drill. So yes, we can do those. So Azure Site Recovery can do a full disaster recovery test. And all this without affecting the live environment. So to do this, we usually have in the Azure portal a button that says test failover. We can just click there and we can do it, or we can also issue this through PowerShell and Azure CLI. So let's do a demo where we're going to set up disaster recovery with Azure Site Recovery. Okay, so now it's time to do replication. I'm going to Recovery Services Vault. I click on my vault, and now on the overview blade here on the top, I will choose the option that says Replicate. In here, it's pretty easy. I just need to say, what is the source? Yeah, it's in East US, and this is my source resource group, so I already defaulted to this one. Okay, everything is good. And this is the VM that I want to replicate. Now, if you see here on the configure settings, I will just say, well, I want to move this to West US, for example. The target subscription will be this one. And then in here, you can see the target resource group, target virtual network. So basically, okay, all the defaults. If you want, you can customize this. Just needed to click there, and you can tweak names and things like that. I'm just going to click create Azure resources. So now all my Azure resources that I defined in here, okay, they are going to be created. So we have to wait a couple of minutes for this to be created, and there you go. So this has been created, so we should validate this now, so it should not take that much time to. And there you go. So now that we are in this phase, I just need to click enable replication, and now my replication is being enabled for this virtual machine. So let's wait a little bit for this to happen. So now that our replication is done, I can just go to replicated items, and I can see here, okay, my replication, it is still synchronizing, and you can see here resume from where you are synchronizing your virtual machine, the origin and the destination. So now we just needed to wait for this to finish, and then, like I said here in the top, we can even do the failover and the test failover. Of course, right now it is grayed out, but it will be enabled as soon as our replication finishes synchronizing. And this is how you can replicate an Azure virtual machine. It is important also that understand that we can also monitor, and we should monitor all the replicated item, failover, success tests that I can have. So all this information, it is quite important. And I can do all of this from the overview blade of the site recovery. So we just need to go there, and you can find something similar to the screenshot that you have here. What about failover and failback? So failover is the process that takes place when the decision is made to invoke the disaster recovery plan for the business. So if I have here on-prem, I'm replicating this. If I need to do a failover, it means that, well, I need to start to use that Azure virtual machine. I can also do the failback, which is the reverse of the failover, because so when you have the decision is made to execute the DR plan for our organization, then we also need to do what? We also need to do the reprotection. So reprotection is when a VM is failed over, a replication performed by Azure Site Recovery is no longer happening. So you have to re-enable the protection to start to protect that virtual machine again. Talking about failback policy, so when you create an on-premises replication policy to copy your on-prem machines to Azure, there is a failback policy that is created automatically for you. The policy has some fixed attributes, and we cannot, okay, we can't change we can't change those attributes, okay? What about Azure Backup? So Azure Backup provides cloud-based backup restore services, both for Azure on-premises virtual machines. So both virtual machines can be protected. Data workloads and machine state can all be backed up automatically at the granular level. Azure Backup also offers integration with some specific applications like SQL Server, SharePoint, and Exchange. So it is able to do application consistent backups for those workloads. Versus between Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery. So Azure Site Recovery replicates virtual machine to secondary locations and does failover if a disaster affects a site, when Azure Backup recovers data in a more granular way. For example, it recovers virtual machine disks or specific files and folders that has become corrupted, or even a an accidental deletion from users. Some of the benefits that I have with Azure Backup: automatically storage management, so I don't need to worry about storage accounts and all of this. Highly available, unlimited data transfer, data security, no limit retention times, and it's a highly available storage that I have. Backup an Azure virtual machine using Azure Backup. So I can do is done a snapshot in a point-in-time backup of all the disks of the virtual machine. For an Azure virtual machine, Azure Backup uses different extensions that will support this. If you're using Windows, it will use the VM Snapshot extension, and if it is a Linux machine, it's called VM Snapshot Linux. And of course, they have a little bit different capabilities because the way that they interact with the OS level, it is slightly different too. The vault is what I need to create. So I create a recovery services vault. And then when I do this, I can just basically go to a virtual machine saying backup. Where do you want to back up? Hey, I want to back up this to that virtual, to that recovery services vault. Or I can go to the recovery services vault and click I want to protect an item. And what is the item? It's on Azure, it's a virtual machine, and then you just find the virtual machine. To do this, so I have agents, okay? So I have the Azure Backup Virtual Machine extension. This is for Azure, just natively this is installed. You don't even notice, to be honest. And it's installed, it's through this agent. I can also use the Microsoft Azure Backup Server Protection Agent, also known as MARS agent. And I can use this backup server agent. So you need to install a backup server, which is basically a virtual machine that you need to install. And then you can install this MABS agent, or I can use the MARS agent. Okay, so the MARS agent, there's no backup server. So you just need to install this simple agent in your virtual machines that you want to protect, and you can just run this. This is useful, for example, the MARS agent, when you want to do backup of files and folders, for example, because it is super simple to set up. There are certain limitations, is that this can only do 3 backups a day, and there is only a version for Windows, so there is no version for Linux. If you want to do files and folder backup on Linux, well, you have to use the backup server. So, but better yet, let's do a demo. Okay, so now let's do a backup of a virtual machine. I'm just going to use here my recovery services vault. I have here this one, okay, I can just use this recovery services vault. By the way, creating a recovery services vault is much more like creating a standard Azure resource. Just new recovery services vault, just ask you the name, and the location, the resource group, and subscription. That's it. So in here, if I click backup, so I have a bunch of options here that says Azure, Azure Stack, or on-prem resources. Well, it's an Azure virtual machine, so yeah, makes sense that I choose Azure. Because I choose this, I also have here different options. I can do virtual machines, Azure file shares, SQL Server in Azure VM, or SAP HANA in Azure VMs. I will go for virtual machine. I click backup. Now I can create here a policy, a backup policy, or I can use one of the existing ones, which is the case I'm going for the one that I already have. And now I just need to click add. And I need to choose what virtual machines I want to add. In my case, I want to add this VM workstation. I will just press OK. And it has been added here to the list, and then I will click Enable Backup. And then this will take a while to do the backup. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you an already existing virtual machine so that you can see that after a while you will see here your workstation VM showing up in the list. And if you click it on that, you will see something like this. You can back up the VM now, restore, file recover, you can stop the backups and things like that. So it's not going to initiate the backup right away, by the way. It's only when the backup policy triggers. If you wanted to back up right away, you have to come here after you create the action to do the backup and then initiate the backup. So you're forcing the backup to act like now. Okay, and this is why we can back up an Azure virtual machine. So what about restore options? What kind of restore options will I have? So I can create a new VM and restore my virtual machine to a new virtual machine. I can restore the disks, or I can just replace an existing virtual machine. So those are the three options that I have to restore the Azure virtual machine. So let's just do a demo and let's just see this in action. So I'm in the Azure portal, and in order for us to restore a virtual machine, so let's go to Recovery Services Vault. I have here my Recovery Services Vault. Now, if I go on the left here to the option that says Backup Items, I can see all my backup items. I go to Azure Virtual Machines. There you go. It is our virtual machine in here. I click on my Windows VM, and I have here a bunch of restore points. So if I want to just do file recovery, I can just click under file recovery, but I want to do what? I want to restore my virtual machine. So I'm going to select that option. I need to select here what is the restore point that I want. Let's imagine I choose this one here. And now I have the two options. So I can create a new virtual machine or replace the existing virtual machine. So creating a new virtual machine, just asking me, okay, yeah, what's the name of the new virtual machine, in which virtual network you want it, which subnet. So I can just say to the default subnet, and I need to choose a storage account that is going to act as the staging storage account, the staging location for that. If I choose, I can also say restore just the disks. Okay, I don't need to restore the virtual machine itself. I can just do that in here, or I can just say replace the existing virtual machine, because it knows what virtual machine it is. So I just need to choose what is the staging location. And if I press restore, it will initiate the restore process, and that's it. This is how we can restore an Azure virtual machine. So Microsoft provides Azure backup services to create all-encompassing backups with predictable pricing system, and let us easily keep track of any Azure data backup costs. Pricing for backing up SQL Server is based on paying for both instance counts, the data getting protected, and the storage costs every month. By default, we get 7 days of automated backups on our database that are copied to a read-access GRS standard blob storage. This storage is used by weekly full backups, daily differential backups, and transactional log backups copied every 5 minutes. What we have is that the size of the transaction log will also depend on the rate of the change of the database. And in terms of what amount of storage, well, a minimum storage amount, it's equal to 100% of the database size that is provided at no extra charge, but additional consumption of backup storage is going to be charged in gigabytes per month. Other tiers you also get, instead of 7 days, you are going to get up to 35 days. After that, well, if you want to do more, you have to pay and use long-term backup and long-term storage. So what you have here is backing up, so SQL. So there you go. Like I was saying, we have full backups, backing up everything in a database, and transaction logs is backup. I can also use differential backups that I basically, in the differential backup, everything that changed since the last full backup is being backed up on that differential backup. In SQL databases, this is a 12-hour, every 12 hours it is done. Transactional backups. So the content of the transactional log files are backed up. SQL database makes a transactional log every 5 to 10 minutes. So transactional backups enable the administrators to restore to a specific point in time. It's pretty cool. You can really just use a command, restore, and then just says, I want to stop at, and you can do this. In Azure, it's a little bit different because you can't use the restore command, but there are commands that do the equivalent of that. If this is not enough for you, I can also do long-term backup retention policies. So if you need more than the 35 days that I was telling you, so you can create retention policies. And when you do this, I can store Azure SQL database backups, again, in a read access GRS, blob storage for up to 10 years. And if I need access to any backup in this long-term retention storage, I can just restore it as a new database by using either the Azure portal, PowerShell, or even using the Azure CLI. Some of the examples of long-term retention policies, I'm not going to bother you with all of them, but let's just see the first one. This is a policy that retains the third full backup of each year for 5 years. If I do like the last one, it's a little bit more complete here. Retains each weekly backup, so weekly for 4 weeks, monthly for 12 months, and you can see there, and also the first full backup taking on the first week of each year, that is going to be retained by, because y equals 10, so for 10 years, which is the max that you can. So and you just have to create these long-term retention policies, and it will be your data, it will be backed up. So now it's time to have some quiz questions, and we can get the first one. So the first question, it's about that I have all the resources in this table. And the question is, what resources can be backed up using Vault 1? And we can see in the table that I have 2 resource groups, both in West US. And of course, well, it doesn't make sense to talk about the resource group where they are, because they are a resource group. Then I have 2 recovery services, Vault 1, Vault 2. That Vault 1 is in Central US and Vault 2 is in West US. And then also the corresponding resource groups where they are created. Then I have there a virtual machine. I have a storage account that has a container, a blob container, and I have a storage account that has a file share. And I still have a SQL DB called SQL DB1. Then you have all the locations there. So the VM is in Central US. The blob container, so the storage, basically that storage account is in West US, both for the container and the file share. And then I have the SQL DB also in East US. And then now the question is basically, what can I back up using the recovery service vault named Vault 1? So in this case, as you can see, Vault 1, it's located in Central US. So the answer will be that only VM1 can be backed up, because only resources from this region can be backed up. Now I have question number 2. I have the same table with the same resources, but now I'm not talking about what can I back up with Vault 1, but with Vault 2. And as you can see there, so Vault 2 is in West US, and if we follow the same rule that we talked about before, so VM1, well, can't be because it's in Central US, but I have also a SQL database, it's in East US, so also doesn't make sense too. Over there, and then I have in West US, so I have the storage account, so I can do containers and shares. So now if we see the answer of what can we back up in Vault 2, it's only basically the share from the first storage account, from storage account 1, can be backed up. Because, well, first of all, only the storage account is in West US, and only file shares are possible to be back up. So I cannot back up blob containers. For that, I have other features like soft delete, for example, that can help you on that. I have the third question is about you have to back up a Linux virtual machine. That virtual machine is running in another cloud. I need to use basically Azure Backup to back up files and folders that I have on that machine. So I don't need to back up the VM. I need to back up just files and folders that I have on the machine. Which of the following can be used? So I can just use the Mars agent and install it on a Linux virtual machine, or I have to use the Azure backup server. So the Mars agent is basically the Azure Recovery Services agent that can do files and folders. But in this case, the correct answer has to be the Azure backup server, because the Mars agent, it's the simplest solution for sure, but currently it is only available for Microsoft Windows. So Microsoft doesn't have yet a version to run the Mars agent in Linux machines. So the last question that we have here, it is around kind of similar questions. I have a Windows virtual machine now. It is running in another cloud. I need to use the Azure backup to back up files and folders. So same thing, but now it's a Windows virtual machine. Now it just tells me that I should do this every 6 hours. So they want me to back up every 6 hours. Which of the following can be used? So I have the Mars agent. I can use the backup server, or in this case here, okay, the answer will be the backup server again. The Mars agent, it is available for Windows. Yes, I could install it on the Windows VM, but it only provides you to do 3 times a day backup. So it doesn't allow you to do more than 3 backups every day. And if you want to do this will need to do 4 backups a day. So you can't use this. You have to use the Azure backup server. So those are, let's just say, specific details about the Mars agent that we always need to know. You can also learn more with some self-paced learning resources that you can find on Microsoft Learn. As you can see here by your screenshot, so there are several learning paths on Microsoft Learn for administering infrastructure resources in Azure, for architecting storage, for architecting compute infrastructure, networking, but also for other topics like containers with Docker, with AKS, with ACI, also with security, managing security operations, and of course, don't forget also managing identities. So research for this learning resources that you can find on aks.ms/learn. So this is the Microsoft Learn platform where you can learn much more about these topics. It was a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. I hope our participants will really benefit from it. Also, as an additional resource, let me remind you that this series on administering Microsoft Azure will also be available for you to watch on demand at aka.ms/enablevts. In fact, you can find more virtual training series available for your on-demand consumption there. We wish you all the very best once again. Goodbye.
Mhm.